So shortstop, you said, is your favorite position in softball, correct?
Correct.
What is it about being a shortstop that excites you the most?
Well, I really like all the action that it gets.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also like the throwdowns and like tagging people out and then throwing to first and getting the play.
Okay. So
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I like that's a good answer. Aggressive, that's good. When I asked you this earlier, when you're talking about hitting, you said you're a power hitter.
Yeah.
Does that mean you're swinging for the fences, going for a home run every time?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. How's your coach feel about that?
I don't know.
Don't know. That's fair. That's a fair answer. So I'm going to ask you a question because I'm relating this to my daughter that plays softball. When if the coach ever goes to you and says, "Hey, I want you to lay down a bunt," what goes to your head? And be honest.
I don't really like to bunt, so
That's fair. I figured that might be the answer.
He was hoping for that.
Yeah. Same with my daughter. She's like, I mean, she doesn't show it. She complies and does what the coach asks her to do. But if you asked her, if you said, "Hey, do you like to bunt?" She's like, not especially. But I get it. In certain instances, it's the thing to do.
I can bunt. I just don't really like to do it.
Yeah.
It's like I would rather like swing.
Right, because bunting is boring.
It
right?
is, and it's like what if it's like a bad pitch and you have to pull back and you don't pull back in time? It's a strike.
Right.
She's not down for the risks.
It's fair. I get it. All right. Well, we'll swing for the fences on this podcast episode. How's that?
Okay.
All right. Cool. Is this thing on? All right. Hey, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Summits Podcast. Thank you all for joining us from wherever you guys get your podcasts, or if you're tuning in from the Heroes Foundation or on the Heroes Foundation YouTube channel, thank you for doing so. Today, September, Pediatric Cancer Awareness Month or Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. It's a big month for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We are joined by Kim and Piper Lyon. Guys, welcome to the Summits Podcast.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Kim, why don't you start? Give us a little background intro on yourself as well as Piper, and then you can chime in on anything that she gets wrong. How's that?
Okay.
Sure. Well, like I said, my name's Kim Lyon, and we have originated from the south side of Indianapolis, out in Franklin Township, home of the Flashes.
There you go.
I was born and raised out there. Voted most likely to never leave Franklin Township in my high school senior class.
Okay,
And I
nice.
still haven't left.
So you were a Flash?
So yes.
Okay,
So they got that right. You know, usually they don't, but they did get that one right. And I grew up in a family of 10 kids. I am
10 kids, really?
Yes.
I mean, I knew you had at least a couple of sisters because they've been to the gala before, I
Yes.
believe.
Mhm.
But I didn't realize 10.
Yeah, I'm
Wow.
the second oldest. So I have an older brother, and
Okay.
then I have 8 younger siblings.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, and you know, we all grew up there, and we all pretty much live within 10 minutes of my parents now, with the exception of one of my brothers. He lives a little bit further south, and then I have actually 3 siblings now doing travel nursing. So, but we all
Okay.
pretty much stayed pretty tight knit.
Never mind.
So yeah, born and raised there. My husband is Matt, and he grew up in Greenwood, Indiana. Went to Greenwood High School, and we met working in the restaurants when I was in my low 20s, and got married and had 2 beautiful daughters, Piper and Brooklyn. And now I started out doing corporate communications and marketing. And then after I had our second daughter, I kind of retired from that, and now I do full-time real estate. And my dad owns a real estate company on the south side, so I work with him doing that.
That's residential real estate, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Who's your realtors? Woo-hoo.
There you go. Shameless plug. We can do that.
Yes. Got to do that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Piper is in 5th grade, and Brooklyn is in 3rd grade. And as she already mentioned, we're in the thick of it with softball for both of them.
And we're starting basketball.
And yes, they just had basketball's
Basketball's
tryouts.
already starting.
Yep.
Travel
Wow.
basketball. They
We're
had
suppo-
tryouts.
We're
Okay.
supposed to get the list either today or Sunday. So
So
Okay.
she's hoping, she's been on the team for the last 2 years, so
Yeah.
she's hoping to continue.
So what position in
that streak.
basketball?
I'm mostly. I can't remember the names.
You're a 4 or a 5, yeah. But there's a really
Okay.
tall girl on your team, so usually she's the center.
She's like
You're not.
2.5 heads taller than me.
Really? Wow. That's
Yeah, and
impressive.
you're pretty tall.
Well, cool. So 5th grade, Piper. What's the hot topic in 5th grade these days? I'm a little out of the loop. My kids are getting older.
Well, everyone's so obsessed with TikTok, and they're doing
Yeah.
like TikTok dances in
Ugh.
class half the time.
It brings back bad memories. Yeah.
And then now they're all about cussing.
Oh, my.
Right. Hmm.
Not
Okay.
you, though, right?
No.
Yeah,
not
you
me.
would never do that. Never do such a thing.
Yeah, well, and where do they learn all the cussing?
TikTok.
That's what she
Really?
says. Yeah, she said that's where they all learn.
Okay.
TikTok or like YouTube.
I thought you might say dad, which in my case, with my daughter, she's probably accurate. But
Could be.
so TikTok, there's a lot of cussing on TikTok, huh?
So,
Interesting.
not that you would know.
Yeah, I don't watch it, but
You've heard.
But, you said there's a lot of Swifties. A lot of Swifties
Okay.
in 5th grade.
I'm not a Swiftie.
Yeah, so you're not you don't like Taylor Swift necessarily, or you just not that into it.
I'm not that into it. I don't
Okay.
like her.
Yeah.
I like one of her songs. It's like,
We appreciate that. We don't have to try and get the tickets.
Exactly.
but I do like country artists like
Okay.
Luke Combs and
Yep.
Luke Bryan.
Mm-hmm.
We actually went to one of Luke Bryan's concerts.
Did you?
Yeah,
Nice.
it was
We're
so
at
fun.
here locally.
Where was it?
It was at the Ruoff Music Center.
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
That was a good time, wasn't it?
Yeah,
That
it was.
That was their. Well, that wasn't your first concert, but
I went to One Direction.
One Direction was your first concert.
Yeah.
Awesome. Did your dad go?
No. He stayed
I
home
wish
with
you
my
had said
sister.
yes, because the next time I see him, I'm like, oh, I heard you're really into One Direction.
hey, you liked One Direction, don't? Actually, surprise! We're telling everybody.
That's okay.
We had a good time though, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was your sister's first concert. They
Okay.
said there was a lot of people there. Yeah, it was a good
Yeah.
time. Got to stay up really late.
Yeah.
So you said you had a math test today. How'd that go?
It was okay.
Right. What did we learn in math today?
That's not what you told me.
I thought that it was okay.
She
that
loves
was okay?
math.
You do love math?
Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive.
The only like lowest score I've ever got was like only missing one question.
Nice.
The rest were like 100s.
So is math your favorite subject, or what is your favorite subject? Math?
Math is my favorite
Okay.
subject, and then it goes social studies and then ELA.
Okay.
I don't like writing.
Sure. That's okay.
But your teacher said you're a great writer.
Yeah, my last year's teacher said that I was a good writer. I wrote, so we were supposed to create an ending of a story, and I wrote 6 pages.
But she hates writing.
Wow.
She wrote 6 pages.
Right.
Because there's
Did you write
just
it,
so
or
much
did
to add.
ChatGPT write it?
Huh?
Shouldn't even know. Don't even tell her about that.
Yeah, that's the kids. Well, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, they
6
need to
pages,
still
really.
try and use their brains
Right,
at
yes.
this age, you know.
Well, yeah, you're right. We'll leave it at that. That's correct. All right, cool. So what else is going on in your world today that we should know about?
You
I
tried
don't-
out contacts.
Oh, yeah, I did try out contacts.
Right.
I'm not wearing them. I took a break for a little bit. Plus, I had to get a new contact because the right one didn't want to rotate
Okay.
into like its like normal position. So we had to get a new right contact, and she just picked it up today.
Okay. Yeah. I have contacts. I've been wearing them since freshman year in high school, maybe. So it takes a little while to get used to, but I prefer that, especially when playing sports versus
Yeah.
having glasses on. Your field of vision's a little.
I can't tell you how many times I got hit and my glasses fell off on the court
Oh yeah.
last year.
That was people's secret weapon, you know, to
Oh, really?
hit the girl with the glasses and knock them off onto the
So you
floor.
feel like in some cases they were deliberately trying to do that.
But travel's more like elbows
Yeah.
than basketball.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, cool. So, let's see. Why don't we flow straight into the main topic of why we're here? Piper, if you want to start, or Kim, you can jump in however you want. Why don't you, if you would, share with us your cancer story?
So I was 5 years old when I got it, and When did we go to the hospital?
Well, we kind of went to the hospital twice, didn't we?
Yeah.
Actually, it was 6 years ago this exact week that
Really?
we found out. Mm-hmm. Yep, I made the post letting everyone know that you were sick exactly 6 years ago today, actually.
So that was after you found out the formal diagnosis at that point? Okay.
Yeah, we actually, she had just started kindergarten, and she just got a regular back-to-school cold. And, you take them to the doctor, and they're like, oh, yeah, everyone's getting it. It's that back-to-school virus, which I'm sure it started out that way.
Yeah.
And then she was just getting really high fevers. I think it went up to 104.7 at one point in time. And, the doctors just said, wait it out. She'll get over it. And in about 7 to 10 days, alter back and forth between ibuprofen and, Tylenol and things like that. So we did all the right things. And she went back to school. And then a day later, it came back again. So we kept her home for 48 hours and she was feeling better. And then it came back again. And so over Labor Day weekend, we took her to an immediate care because her tonsils were getting really big.
Okay.
And they said, well, it looks like a classic case of tonsillitis. So they gave us an antibiotic, and she went home and she was still having these fevers. And so actually on the Sunday before Labor Day, we ended up taking her to a local hospital. It wasn't a children's hospital.
Yeah.
And we took them there and just said, something's going on with her. She's got these fevers. She's waking up in the middle of the night. If she opened her mouth, you could see her tonsils really big sticking out back there. And the emergency room doctor said, I think we should do a CT scan. And then they said, well, we can't do it unless an ENT signs off on it. So they told us we had to stay the night. Hopefully the ENT would come in, and then we would be seen and be released on Labor Day. And the ENT never showed up. I don't know why. I'm sure they didn't have anyone at the facility, which, children's hospitals, they have everyone on call all the time. And so anyway, we were sent home, and that whole next week, she never improved and would still wake up in the middle of the night. And
Feeling like I would have to puke.
Yes.
Right,
yeah. She would just say, I feel like I'm going to throw up, and nothing would come out, and she would be gagging. It sounded like something was going to come out, but nothing ever did. And then finally, my husband that weekend, he just said, if she wakes up in the middle of the night again, we're taking her to a different hospital. And I was just like, no, they said she'll be fine. Well, the NT got a hold of us, and they just said, what's going on? I said, well, her tonsils are huge. And of course, moms, we just go self-diagnosing everything. So my diagnosis was because she had been told it was tonsillitis. So I said, okay, it's tonsillitis. They must be infected. She's got to have an abscess in there. And it's draining down into her stomach, making her stomach, because her stomach started sticking out. Yeah. And I was like, she's got an infection in there. And then they said, okay, well, we'll just go ahead and she was supposed to have her tonsils taken out 2 months later. And they said, well, we'll just go ahead and take them out now. So I was like, oh, thank goodness, because this was supposed to happen on Friday. Well, then pre-op called me on Wednesday, and they said, has she been taking Motrin? And I said, well, yeah, she's had a fever. That's what they told me to do. And they're like, well, we can't operate on her. And I was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And they're like, well, call your, pediatrician. Called them. They're like, we don't know. Ask your ENT. And I'm like, they just told me to call you. Right. And so that's why my husband was like, look, if this happens again, I'm taking her to a different hospital. And I was like, well, I think we should just wait. And sure enough, that weekend, same thing happened. And he said, well, I'm going to take her to Riley Hospital. And I said, well, you go take her and do that. I'm going to church with Brooklyn because I've already heard it. Typical, right? So he takes her down there. I go to church with the other one. And then we just got to church, and he texts me, and he's like, they don't think this is tonsillitis. You need to come down here. And I was thinking, oh, no. Well, I still wasn't really thinking, oh, no, because I stopped and got Starbucks on my way to the hospital. I'm sure I looked so stupid walking in there, in my church clothes. I left her younger sister with my parents, who were also there. So here I stroll in with my coffee, and he's like, they already took her back for a CT scan. And I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, they said something's wrong with her. And they said, we walked in, they took one look at her, and they said, she needs to get back there right now. Something's wrong with her. So we waited for a little bit, and she was just laying on the bed in there, just closing her eyes, not talking at all. And then about 30 minutes later, one of the people came in, and they said, we're waiting on the doctors come in and talk to you, but we saw some ascites around her stomach, and they're going to come tell you what that means. She leaves the room. Immediately, I'm like Googling ascites around the stomach. And what they said is that that's fluid around the stomach that's usually released by a tumor or something. So I said, Matt, they said ascites. I said, that means there's a tumor in there. And he was like, I don't think so. You shouldn't go to that. I go, I'm just preparing myself because I swear that's what they're going to say. 10 minutes later, a group of about 4 doctors come in and they said, we're from the oncology team. And I just immediately was like, oh, I knew it. And so they
did a blood
down,
draw at that point in time or no?
She had a blood draw at the hospital the week before and they said it was fine. And so then we went here and that wasn't what worried them. It was the tonsils that were huge. And then they did the CT scan and then they saw what they saw on there. And they came in and they just said, we scanned her and she has a giant tumor in her chest. One of her lungs is 1/3 collapsed. She has tumors in her stomach, all in her kidneys, and her throat. They said the one in her throat is a tumor too. Okay. And we were just like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? And they were just like, well, we need you to get upstairs right away. So they sent us from the emergency room straight up to the cancer floor. And at that point, I started crying because I was relieved that someone knew what was wrong with her. Because for over a month, we knew that something was wrong with her, and regular providers just could not figure it out because they say it's so rare. Well, her case kind of was because normally they don't figure it out in the emergency room. Sure, yeah. It's usually blood work, like you said, that trips it off, or they have pain somewhere. But hers was just fevers and then the throat thing, and then just waking up in the middle of the night. And so they sent us up there. And then once she got hooked up to everything, which that was scary because she had never had an IV before, and her oxygen level was at 85, which they want it to be at like 98. Her oxygen saturation was 85, and so they wanted her to wear an oxygen tube, and she was only 5, and she had never done that before either. Right. That was scary. So actually, do you remember Dad put one on too? He had one that wasn't hooked up to anything. He's the greatest. He put that on, and so he just had the tube in his pocket.
He said if I wore it, he would buy me a purple Power Wheel.
Yeah.
There you go.
That was the deal. If I wore it for well, at that point you just found out that your child has cancer and you're like, I don't do anything, just do what they say. Yeah. So that was one of the deals.
The nurses were super nice. I was getting some kind of shot thing. And then I was scared, and then the nurse let me give her a shot before she gave me a shot. Okay. Yeah. And I
can't believe they did that, but that's what they do. Mm-hmm. So then that night they told us, they said, we don't have the official diagnosis, but what we think she has is some type of lymphoma. Mm-hmm. And they said, we're going to have to do a biopsy of the largest tumor to figure out exactly what it is. Yeah. And so the next morning they took her down to do that. But when they put her to sleep and they were inserting the breathing tube, the tumor in her throat was so big, it actually punctured it, and that started bleeding. Because it was taking a really long time and we didn't know this was happening. So it was so big that it punctured the tumor in her throat. And so they ended up just having to cut off part of the tumor in her throat and take off half of her tonsil for the biopsy. So they never got to biopsy the one in the chest. I mean, she just had the weirdest stuff happen. So after that, what it was determined that she had is something called Burkitts Lymphoma. Okay. And Burkitts Lymphoma is obviously a blood cancer, and it's like other lymphomas, but the thing that makes it unique is that when you have cancer cells with Burkitts Lymphoma, typically anyone who has cancer, only when the cells divide and multiply. Okay. And a lot of times it's between 10 and 30% of the cells divide and multiply at a time, so relatively slower growing. Burkitts Lymphoma is 100% of the cells divide and multiply every time. So they estimated that she went from having no cancer at all. Some kind of switch was flipped and she went to advanced stage 3 within 3 weeks. Wow. So it's understandable why a regular service provider could miss that, because it went from 0 to 90 super quick. And there was no other indication other than the giant tonsils and then the sick feeling and the fevers that night sweats. Well, that's the thing. When I was trying to self-diagnose this, I was looking up all kinds of things, and as much as I didn't want to, I did Google, but I looked up leukemia. I didn't think about lymphoma, because there was a kid growing up in my 7th grade class that had bronchitis, and then he was gone for a really long time, and then we ended up finding out that he had leukemia. And so I just remember some of the things that he was saying, so I looked up the symptoms of leukemia. I mean, I was shaking as I was looking this up, and then when I read the symptoms of it, I'm like, oh, thank goodness she doesn't have that. Okay, God, she doesn't have it. But if I would have looked up the symptoms of lymphoma, she had probably 8 of the 10.
Right.
So, but I just didn't know. I didn't know how prevalent that was. I didn't think of it, and then I didn't think to look that up. I looked up the other one. It's sister or brother, but I didn't look up lymphoma. But if I would have, may have been cued a little bit earlier, but I just didn't know.
Right. Piper, what do you remember from that experience?
I remember like a lot of things, because I remember like every like morning and every night for like maybe like 6 months, I had to get like a shot in each one of my legs.
Okay.
Do you remember anything at all whenever we first found out? Like, do you remember feeling sick or at school not feeling well?
I remember from a picture, I was like laying, like trying not to like pass out, like asleep, because it was really late in the day. I mean, late at night.
When you got into your room?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was.
And then I remember that like I had all these like cords hooked up to me. I had a bunch of surgeries. One of them was probably the worst one was probably getting my appendix out, because I couldn't move my body for about like 2 weeks.
Okay.
Because like it was so sore I couldn't move.
Yeah.
And then I remember I would have like these like back surgery things every like maybe 2 weeks or something like that. But they would like put this like white mixture in like a tube, and then it would like go through like my port or something, and I would fall asleep on my mom's shoulder. And then I woke up. I remember that they had to transport me into a hospital bed and take me all the way to my room, and then put me like carefully transport me into my actual hospital bed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember, since I missed so much school, they had a school there, and I went for a couple of weeks, but I didn't go for that long. That's kind of all the things I kind of remember.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember at all when the doctors were talking to your parents about what was going on? Any memories or feelings about that at all?
Not really.
No.
Yeah, it's funny, but I remember how you acted when they were sitting down telling us. She was in the bed, laying on the hospital bed behind them, and we were on the couch in the those waiting couches in the ER. We were sitting there, and they kind of went in between us. And when they were telling us about it, of course, I was like talking and crying at the same time. And when they walked out, she was like, "Mom, why did your voice sound like that?" And I just said, "Well, I'm worried, but I'm not even sure if we told you that that's what you had. We just told her that she was sicker than we thought she was going to be. And so we were going to have to stay at the hospital longer than what we thought. But we're going to stay there as long as it takes to make her feel better." And she was just kind of like, okay, but you were not feeling well then.
Right. So what was her regimen then for treatment?
Burkitts lymphoma treatment is super intense. It's only a 6-month process as compared to, some others are an immediate 3-year type of deal. Hers was a 6-month, but it did require us to be inpatient the entire time. So we would go up to the floor, and she would get chemotherapy for, I want to say, 6 out of the 7 days that we were there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it would be the majority of the day, because she would either get multiple kinds of drugs, or they would, since she's smaller, they would have to let it go in a slower time. But I mean, I think she was hooked up and actually getting chemo maybe 20 out of the 24 hours of the day. And I could be misspeaking, and it's been a little bit, but I know it was the majority of the day. And so then that last day, they would kind of monitor to make sure she didn't spike a fever or anything like that. And then the hope was we could go home for 2 weeks and then come back again. So every 21 days, we had to do the treatment. But we would have to come back if she got a fever, which always happened. Yeah. So we maybe made it home for 2 days, 3 days, and then her numbers would drop and she'd get a fever and we'd have to go back. And then, when you spike a fever at that, it's expected that you're going to be back in the hospital for 24 to 48 hours because they do a blood draw to make sure there's no bacteria growing there. And then and so a lot of times the rounds ran together because we would get sent back there. Her fevers would last a little bit, and then it'd be time for the new round to start. So that was difficult as a family. I never say any time is convenient for a kid to get sick, but she was 5 and her sister was 3. So it really didn't interrupt our lives, other than I since being a real estate agent, I was able to take the time off. My dad was able to finish up any of the contracts that I still had going and go to the closings for me. And my husband still had to work, but I was able to be there.
Sure.
And then the 3-year-old, she would go to my, she was funny. She was the comedic relief everybody needed at that point in time. But it's not like they were in school and they didn't have sports. So it's always an inconvenient time, but it was a convenient time in that they were so young, we were able to make the accommodations to do that. So
I remember one day where it was my sister's birthday the next day, I think, and she was having either a JoJo Siwa or a Troll's birthday, and I was like, oh, I want to go there like so bad, and I didn't know if I was going to get cleared or not. So then I'm like, so we are just like, do you think we're going to go home? Do you think we're going to stay here? And then the nurse comes in and they say, you're good to go, you can leave. And I'm like, oh yes, I can go home finally and see and like have like be with my sister for her birthday.
Yeah, that was the first time you got to go home. So when we were first admitted, they keep you there for the entire first cycle just to make sure that everything goes okay. So if we went in, we went in the week after Labor Day. So it would have been, September what? Oh, it was actually September 10th. I remember because my sister's birthday is on the 11th. And the day that she got back out of having the biopsy, they came up to visit. And so we were in there from September 10th until October 3rd. We got released on October 3rd because that was our sister's birthday. So that first round, we were in there for the entire month. And she was in the ICU. She was actually in the ICU for an entire week because when they hit her tonsil, they said, basically what they said is that the tumor in her throat was so big, she had about a toothpick width to breathe through. And that's why she was feeling like she was going to throw up all the time because it was just sitting in the middle of her throat. Right. And so they said, well, we're going to give her first round tonight, but we're afraid that there's so much tumor in her body. She was 5. She wasn't very big. And they said if they would have put all the tumor together, it would have been the size of a regular sized basketball. But it was just kind of, all over her body. Sure. And so they were afraid that when they gave her the chemo, that her kidneys wouldn't be able to handle all that. Okay. And so they did end up putting her on a ventilator. And so that was terrible. So she was on a ventilator. She was asleep for about a week. They had to teach her to kind of like walk again and things like that. But they were just so worried that when they gave her that first round, all the tumors would start breaking down. And that was the most, have you ever seen that before?
No.
It is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen because they had her hooked up to a catheter, obviously, and whenever they give you the chemotherapy, the tumors start breaking down, and then you just kind of like expel them out of your body. Well, it would just go into the bag. It looked like thousands of pieces of oatmeal coming out. And the people in the PICU were like, I've never seen this before. They were even kind of like, they were calling people over to look at it, like, look at all this. And it was just full. But they said it was the tumor lysing. It was just like they were breaking apart and coming out. But so they were afraid, since her kidneys already had tumors in it, that it wasn't going to be able to filter all that. And so they actually had her prepared to be hooked up to a central line to go on dialysis. Okay. But thankfully they didn't have to do that. She was able to handle that. That's so after a week we were transferred to the regular cancer floor, but she was on a ventilator for a week. That was scary.
Yes, for sure. Piper, how are you feeling today?
Pretty tired.
Pretty tired? Yeah.
Cancer-wise.
Yeah.
How do you
in
feel?
General.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Tell them you just graduated to what?
The cancer survivorship clinic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So was that the 5-year mark? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
We have a party every year, and did we do smoothies this year?
Oh, you had the chocolate.
Oh.
So to celebrate her bell ringing every year, we do a little cancer-free party for her, and so we just let her pick one small thing that she wants to do, and she invites, because we had friends. She had friends that age that would come up and visit her, and so the ones that were kind of a part of that whole process, they remember it. I mean, they knew Piper was bald. They came up to see her.
There's nothing wrong with bald.
Well, and she has the most perfect round head, and you would never know until it was. I mean, it was the most perfect ball. It was beautiful. But yeah, so she has a cancer-free party every year and invites a few friends. And so this year, your choice was we've done a popcorn bar before.
Yeah, we did milkshakes.
Mm-hmm. And then you did
we did a chocolate, like a chocolate fountain.
Yep.
This year, so we had like maybe 7 different things. We had marshmallows, graham crackers, strawberries. Did we have pineapple?
Mm-hmm.
We had pineapple, and what else?
I don't know, but you guys had a good time. It was messy, but it was fun.
Sounds great. So how often do you have to go back to see your doctor? Or is it at this point?
Well, at this point, it's once every year.
Once a year?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then before, it was every 6 months.
Right.
And then before that, it was every 3 months.
Every 3 months, yeah.
And before that, it was every month.
Okay. Yeah. Well, good. Well, we're glad that you are here and glad that you're feeling better. Congrats on making it to 5 years.
Thanks.
That's a big step. Let me ask you this. If you were to meet, or if you were going to speak to another kid who is going through the same experience that you had, and they're in the throes of it right now, they're experiencing it right now, what might you share with them?
I would share that it is pretty tough, but you can probably get through it if you believe. Okay.
Oh, you're okay. It's tough, isn't it? Mm-hmm.
No, you're good. That's right.
Great.
You want to tell them attitude means a lot, doesn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the support of your friends and your family. And lots of prayers, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are good words. Attitude is, as they like to say, attitude is everything. And you're right about that. I remember that very well. And it's oftentimes easier said than done, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I also appreciate the things that you're doing after the fact. I mean, you're taking the emotion that you can see right now and you're turning it into action. You guys have done a lot of things to support other kids who have similar circumstances and similar experiences, and you're trying to make it a little bit better for them. And in addition to trying to raise money towards research and other things that they're doing to try to improve the treatments and improve the outcomes of other kids who go through something similar that you did, right?
Do you want to tell them what you guys did? Remember during COVID, when there's 2 things. During COVID, when we all had to stay home, what did you guys do? You and Millie in Brooklyn.
I think we made slime kits.
Well, and signs. And
So during COVID, I don't know what went through our heads, but we were like, we should do something, and I think we made all these bracelets, and we were like, kindness day, and like we would like ask for money, and then if they donated, we would give them like a bracelet.
Mm-hmm.
And then we met, like we were holding up the sign, and we made about $200 that day.
Nice.
We did it for about like 5 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they said, well, they had Piper was on the Riley Messenger magazine with the dog, and they gave us the souvenir poster. It's about 3 feet tall.
Nice.
And they had that out there at the end of the driveway with another poster, and they said that all money raised is going to help kids at Riley. And everyone was out walking at that
Sure.
time. And so
Right.
they were fearless. Anyone who walked by, they're like, hey. And we made $285 that day
Nice.
that we donated back
Very
to the
good.
hospital.
Very good.
But
How'd
then-
that make you feel?
It made me pretty happy.
Yeah.
We met this FedEx driver, and he said that his daughter had like brain cancer,
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
and he donated about $20 to us.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then we had our, it's touched a lot of people. Our, one of the guys that came was helping us with our internet. He just, he saw her and she was bald at the time, and he just started crying, and he was asking us about our story, and we told him, and he was just like, you guys have inspired me. He did he does the motorcycle ride every year.
Okay.
And so he actually went back to school and got his nursing degree.
Wow.
Because he said that inspired him to do more.
Very cool.
And so he did that. James, hi. He did that, and he's also a realtor now too.
Okay.
But you guys did that, and then tell them what we do every Halloween.
Every Halloween, we make these bags, and then we put like cups in them, like window stickers for like their hospital doors, like other fun activities for them to do, and we donate about maybe
150.
$150 a year, and we've done that for about like 4 years now.
Mm-hmm. It'll probably be 4 or 5 years that we've done that. We call it Halloween for Heroes. And it's a Halloween bag drive, and each bag is $15, and they end up getting around $30 worth of stuff in the bags, and they get a pair of socks because your feet get freezing cold at the hospital.
Sure.
And then the kids on the cancer floor, there's 35 kids that can be on the cancer floor
Okay.
at a time, and so they get... and then the rest of them, they pass out of the kid zone down on the bottom floor to any kids who come in for appointments or who are also inpatient. But yeah, she said they get the window clings. There's about 3 or 4 different crafts. Everything has to be hospital approved, no glitter.
Right.
We usually do slime or Play-Doh.
Okay.
Everyone gets a book. We've made some really
Legos.
good connections. Well, where do you think they get
There
that?
you go.
Thanks, Team Joey.
Yep.
But yeah, they get the Legos, and so we've just made some really good connections. And we've also had people reach back out to us and say, "My kid got one of those bags when we were in the hospital. Thank you so
Right,
much."
yeah.
And the whole concept behind that was that hospitals, especially children's hospitals, get a ton of donations around
Right.
Christmas.
Yep.
But children who are in the hospital sometimes love Halloween just as much as Christmas. They
Right.
love dressing up, getting candy. But when you're inpatient, you're not allowed to be on that kind of a diet, and you're not allowed to donate those kind of things.
Right.
And so, they said, hey, that'd be great if you wanted to put something together. Halloween would be a great time because it just kind of, it's something else that the kids can get and keep their minds
Right.
off of it.
Yep.
And so we just try and think of different things every year. And her and her friends, they come over and we stuff all the bags and then deliver them off.
So we're just at like 2 boxes, and then the parents come around with their bags, and then we just stick like each one in there.
Yeah. It's pretty fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
pretty
To
fun.
make you feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it also goes quicker. It's quicker than I thought, because like I feel like if we're doing 150 bags, it would go really slow. But no, it's super fast.
Yeah.
It's a
That's cool.
machine.
Right.
We run them right through.
Assembly line. Well, that's awesome. Piper, thanks for coming in today and
You're
sharing your
welcome.
story. Really appreciate it. I hope you keep doing well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming up. We appreciate you guys.
Thank you for having
fighting
us.
traffic and coming up, sharing your story. We appreciate your time. And thank all you guys for joining us on this episode of the Summits Podcast. So again, from wherever you guys get your podcast, if you're tuning in on the Heroes Foundation YouTube channel, thank you for doing so. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Don't forget, if you're on the YouTube channel and you haven't hit the subscribe button, please do that. Doesn't cost you a single penny. We would greatly appreciate it. Piper would appreciate it as well. And don't forget, guys, beat cancer.